Happy Sunday. Welcome back to Retake the Week. Man, what a major. What a major. It's been quite special. I mean, for me, Pick'em still hit, at least for this stage. My double swing picks, 3 out of 4 hit, but my word, are we about to have some interesting conversations about what has happened this night? I mean, I woke up to some interesting things. Including one result I didn't actually notice until I double take. I just saw some people were locking in their pick'em saying, oh, this pick is now ruined. And I started looking, I was like, oh crap, that game did finish. We'll get to that in a moment. Of course, it'll be the focus of this show. But first, we have to thank the people who make this show, honestly, as good as it is. It's the members. Without them, the show wouldn't be on Spotify. We wouldn't have the Q&A. We wouldn't have a lot of the fun stuff, in my opinion, that we do. And it's just nice to have some support. So yes, members do get access to interviews, including the most recently uploaded interview with Regin, when he discusses the absolute catastrophe that kind of was organizationally TSM initially, as well as how he built the team up, like the vision of what they actually wanted to execute, why they made certain choices. It's very interesting. You get BTS from this episode, as well prospect demos, plus the right to vote. So it's a whole package, let's say, being a member. There's a lot of things that come with it that will never be made available to non-members. Let's just put it that way. I'm not making all those interviews available to non-members. It's just not worth it for me. So yeah, Quacke, do you have anything to promote, or are we good to go straight into the major?
I'm back to writing a little bit. I've been doing it for a couple of weeks with a Swedish news site called Esport Media. I think I might have touched on it before.
You
but
have
yesterday I put out an opinion piece, which I'm also going to talk about a little bit later. So no, I don't have much to promote, but yeah, you can go find that wherever you find it. I was told it was also good quality even when you translated it to English. So you can go read it. It's on my Twitter somewhere.
Yeah, always difficult to read the parts that are in Swedish, I find. I can make the noises, but they don't really mean a lot to me. But yes, once I hit translate to English, everything makes a lot more sense. But let's get straight into it. We have to talk about the major. We're in the elimination stage. 2-2 games, still technically going on. FaZe Fura is happening in my peripheral. Like, I have the scoreboard there. FaZe not shitting the bed currently after losing their pick of Inferno. So we'll have to keep an eye out on that. But I'm going to start with my take, like the point I made straight away. It's going to be on the thumbnail. It's going to be in the title. NAVI fans, those of you who spent the entire year fighting against certain narratives, is this a fluke? Do you now get the definition of a fluke? Is this one actually counted as a fluke? The team that was the best of this season, who made 6 straight finals, won 3 trophies, big trophies, big events, never the prestige events. They lost Cologne, but still 3 big event wins, didn't make top 8 of the major. This result would be a fluke. Just like how the opposite is incredibly true in the first season, where NAVI were not the best team. They were not dominant in any way. They really didn't threaten to win many titles. And then out of nowhere, off the back of an insane JL performance, realistically, and the occasional bit flourish, won a major. That was a fluke. This is also a fluke, but it's incredibly disappointing. And even those who might lie and be like, oh, the level we saw at other events, I knew this was coming. I felt this coming. Not really. Like, we always give teams like this caliber credit. Like, if they've been able to consistently win and win and win, you kind of have to give them the respect they deserve. But losing out to Heroic, I didn't watch the game. It was on whilst I was sleeping, trying to be awake for this show. I could have stayed up all night, but we wouldn't quite have the same energy on screen right now, I don't think. So I didn't catch the exact details of how it happened. But what I can tell you is just looking at the scoreboard, it seems to be the same story that we have had for Heroic all event long. Nertz is a legit star. Everyone else kind of carrying their weight. You'd want more from Dexter, but generally there's enough fragging going on to support Nertz's stardom to make them get across the line. Of course, Kicksan's still calling it a strong game, but Na'Vi, just not able to handle what Heroic had to offer. Quack, I assume you might have been able to catch the map 3 of this game. Did you watch any of it? What did it look like on Ancient?
Mostly I watched Heroic on Ancient yesterday versus Spirit, actually. I got to watch the full map. And I think Heroic, they play a fine game. Nertz is really good.
Nertz is great really on mid, isn't he? Like, he's just a good mid player. Yeah.
Test has been really good. He didn't really show up in the same way against Na'Vi, but he's played really good all major as well. But what I find interesting about Heroic is that mostly they're still missing Dexter in most of these games.
Yeah.
And even with that quite clear weakness, Navi weren't able to exploit that, which I would imagine like that would have been one of the parts that Blade and Alexis sit down and they realize, well, Dexter's having poor form, and the reason is he's doing this from watching demos and stuff, and then you could try to win off of that. But no, they couldn't. So I'm not too sure about Navi. It's an underwhelming end to the season for them, especially with the world final exit they had just before.
Yeah, which is kind of excused, wasn't it? Like, it was, we all saw it as just a thing. Like, it happened. There's the Mage coming up. The eyes should be focused on that, really, and maybe overlooking Blast. I mean, some people went as far as, saving strats. I even posited the idea, just almost humorously, that they'd been secretly preparing a Vertigo for the Major, but they didn't have to resort to that. Well, no, Dexter, you're right. Form, look, he's not been horrible. We're not talking like having Nikodos, right? He's not that bad. He's like a 0.7 KPR AWPer. Not bad, but the things that are alarming is when you actually watch his POV and you actually see some of the shots he misses. Like, there was a key shot. Was it against Mongols? It was against Mongols. There's like a key shot on Anubis he missed at one point where he's just holding a straight line. Like, he's holding the canals peak from the CTs. Just straight whiffs it. He gets banged. His teammate who's playing close to the canal connector also gets banged out by the same guy. And these are the kind of shots that he missed that you're like, he's still a little bit off. He has the flourishes, the glimpses, the little highlight kind of incidents, but he's just not returned to top form. So yes, it is disappointing from Navi that they couldn't really exploit what was a clear liability in Heroic's game plan.
He's a 108 average, but there's also some horrible series here, like in this event. Yes. Like, he had one crazy map against the Mongols, but then he was dog shit for five maps straight against both Mongols and Spirit, and they just about managed to lose that game against Spirit. So it's like he has been a liability, especially in the season leading up to the Major as well. He was really poor. Like, from a team with the sort of tactical depth that I think Navi have, I would have expected them to, if nobody else could, I would have expected them to be the ones to take advantage of that. But no, they've allowed him to play. He played a 108 in the game as well. So they've allowed him to.
Yeah, like, he wasn't a clear, massive trash AWP, like, he wasn't a dumpster fire. But obviously, we're talking Dexter, we're talking, like, we expect him to be a highly impactful, like, round-winning, map-deciding player consistently. And he wasn't anywhere near that. And I do like, sorry, I just had to point this out again, like, talking about the mirrored narrative from the last Major to this one. Guess who underperformed like crazy? JL. It's perfect. It's aggressively on fucking point. Like, how perfectly opposed these are in the
guess who kind of overperformed. It was Imma. Imma 112.
Yeah, like, that's just,
I mean, that's kind of baseline now, but I mean, compared to the last Major where he
exactly
Jesus Christ, they had 2 players below 0.9, and
I mean, they always have Alexi below it, but Jesus Christ, this has been
it's interesting,
abysmal. But there's always the looming sort of threat, and I love Thorin will always point this out on Twitter. He keeps pointing out on Twitter, but, like, yes, Simple is still technically on their bench. If you really want to shake things up, you want a guy who probably always will hit his shots. You might consider bringing him back for Wonderful. You might consider it. I'm not saying you should,
you might
necessarily, but if you come out of a season where technically you were the dominant best team, and you didn't actually end up capturing an era, like, I would have given them era title if they'd won 6 straight events, won Cologne. Like, we're talking eras, but we didn't get that. So it was slightly disappointing, despite being the best team in the world. Then you come to the Major where you're basically like, okay, this is it. No one can dispute anything if we win this. And you kind of flop. Like, it's going to be alarming.
And
I'm not sure. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was kind of believing that it was kind of like the same sort of way that the Astralis have stumbled, perhaps even in their strongest periods. They would stumble slightly in the Swiss stage, get to the playoffs, and start dominating.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons, like, that stumble and then recovery was one of the reasons why I think a lot of people thought that, Astralis were still really, really, really strong. Like it was one of the reasons that people give credit to Astralis, because they were able to turn it around when they really needed it. Like they knew when it counted, they were really on. And Navi lost the game where it really counted. Like yeah, so I'm sort of wondering about that. I also, like, if we're talking oppers for Navi, like Simple, not to say that Wonderful was the biggest liability here. He definitely wasn't. I think he's played a fair game going by rating, but he's
Yeah, if you look, some of the games I watched where they didn't win and his numbers were abysmal, their BO1s, they got crushed. It wasn't the end of the world. In the series, like I was able to catch, oh my god, opponents. Yeah, the Gamer Legion series. Like they needed to win that, obviously, to stave off elimination. And he played fair. Again, not breaking out the mold in any particularly special way, but he played fair, and that's kind of what I expect from him. So I'm just frustrated because I wanted more from Bit.
Yeah,
I wanted this team in the playoffs just for the quality of Counter-Strike, because they play good Counter-Strike. That's just never not going to be true. I always want to watch them play. I need to see more from the individuals at this kind of
if rumors are true, because I think this was rumored at one point, and you want to shake things up and you want to do it specifically with the Opper. I think this was rumored at one point that they might have a buyback clause on Monacy.
Yeah, but I think it's been at least 2 years. I'm pretty sure there was an expiration date on that.
Yeah, there might have been. Well, he might. I have no idea what Monacy's contract looks like. If he has a 3-year contract, that's ending now, so it might not even matter if they have a buyback clause. But people have been saying, like, some people have been saying that, like, oh, the Bit Monacy connection, like the friendship between them is still very much real, and it's like at some point in their careers, Bit and Monacy would probably want to play together again. And if you want to shake up the Opper, that's probably an option. Like, I'll be the first one to say that no, Navi will never sign a Russian player, but like things can change. If it's Monacy and the alternative is nobody else, then if the alternative is, I'm assuming Simple is not an option. Like I'm just assuming that's the case. I think he doesn't want to, and I would imagine that maybe Navi aren't too keen on it either. Just
maybe.
Well, mostly I just think Simple is maybe not wanting to go that route. And then the next best option is basically like you cannot get Zaiwu. Your next best option probably ends up being someone like Sunpius or Torji, and then it's a bit like, compared to Monacy, like you might want to forego your no Russians rule just for one to create ostensibly the best team in the world. Anyway, I'm just I'm curious. It's an underwhelming end to their season, and it really, there's no discussion about it now. Navi have not begun to build an era like they couldn't have done this fall season. They had a good run, but like they had a good run in between majors. Like Liquid also had a good run in between majors, but then they kind of fluked. They kind of fell off.
But Liquid have a stronger case, because Liquid won street events. They won big events. Like
they were extremely dominant in the events
big event as well. Like they won the big event of that period between majors, so they have a much stronger case for an era in that period. So I think we need to move on. We
do need to
we could talk all day about Navi, exactly what's going to happen to the roster with the big roster shuffle coming up as well. Most likely teams are going to get ripped to pieces. We're going to have one hell of an offseason to discuss, but we'll get to that when we get to that. You wanted to discuss something else, though. It's interesting. Kind of the topic I talked about on a video Friday night. What's your take on this? Which direction are you taking this Mongols conversation?
Yes, Mongols is the team on everybody's lips this major, obviously. Home favorites, and they've also just been quite incredible. There's 2 caveats. So what I wanted to discuss is, do Mongols have a realistic chance of winning this major? And the answer is
kinda, yeah.
Yeah, a realistic chance. It wouldn't be the biggest fluke, probably, as you've gone very blurry there.
Yeah. It's an old shitty webcam. It does that. But yes, we can start there.
I think they do, and a lot of that is going to come down to seeding, I think, because there's 2 caveats to this to begin with. First of all, it kind of depends who they play. Obviously, depends on the Furia FaZe game, which is ongoing. And I mean, if I'm reading the scoreboard right,
it's 12
FaZe are probably closing this.
They've got another gun round coming.
Yeah,
They're still in it.
yeah, Furia, because Furia won this, and then yeah, it could be 13-10, 13-11, maybe perhaps, but yeah, FaZe probably closing in. Fury can still win map 3, so I'm not going to say too much, but it's going to depend on that game, and it's also going to depend on if Valve do a VRS reseeding in between the rounds, because I'm not sure that's not happening. It would be implied by doing a seeding based off like the Valve rankings in between the opening and elimination stage. It's kind of implied that they would do the same thing between the elimination stage and the playoffs, but I think that would also kind of suck.
Right.
Because that would probably drop Mongols to maybe the 3rd or 4th best seed at best.
Really? Where are they currently ranked? So they came into this major as the 5th ranked VRS team. Like,
they might honestly, I think it's a picture at one point where they were 3rd, so they might have gone much better. Let me see if I can get the rankings up. I might actually be unable to do that.
No, I've got them up. So Global Valve ranking currently G2, Vitality, Spirit, Mongols, according to the live updates on HLTV provided.
Yeah, the thing that I'm not sure. It might be. Okay. So they're going to be 4th in that case because all of those other teams have gone through.
All those are through. 5th place is NAVI, who aren't through. And FaZe Fury
are
10.
That is significantly less advantageous though than being top seed, because otherwise they would be top seed under the president. They would be the top seed because on book holds they are actually above Vitality. They would be seed number 1 in the playoffs. So there's 2 routes for how they can get to the final. Either way, if they are top seed, which I'm going to assume they are, because otherwise it's kind of hard to predict. If they are top seed, they're going to play Mouse, no matter what happens in the FaZe Fury game. Entirely winnable game. They won it in a best of 1.
Winnable game, but my God, for me, actually, I think it's one of the tougher matchups they can get.
Oh yeah, sure. But the sort of fact that, like, yes, they do have a realistic chance of winning is that I think if Furia win, 6 out of the 8 playoff teams, or 6 out of the other 7 playoff teams, have been beaten by the Mongols in the past. Like in the past 12 months or so. And that's kind of scary, I think. I'm not sure that, like, Liquid definitely don't have that record. Like, they definitely haven't beaten that many out of the other playoff teams in the past while.
Oh no, Liquid do not have that kind of thing.
I mean, Furia,
I guess the Mongols have beaten a lot of teams like this, but they have also lost to a lot of them in the year. They've played a lot of big events, and they've had upsets and impressive results. But yeah, currently looking at book hauls,
I'm pretty sure
if FaZe go through, they face Mouse anyway. But if the 1 faces the 8, that means in the second round they'd be facing the 4, assuming the 4 wins. So they'd play Spirit, which that I think is a more winnable game for them than.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they've won that in best of 3s as well.
My point is, like, there's a couple matchups I think Mongols are most dangerous in terms of their chances of actually making it through to the final and then winning that final. I think they have a great matchup into G2 because they have firepower across the board, but they also have in G2 an opponent who's not going to be too tactically deep, not going to have, I think, as great a mid-round reads as like a Mouse, whose IGL is, I think, stronger. I think they can find more points of weakness in G2 to apply pressure and go crushing through. I think they've got the same advantage in a Spirit matchup, where Spirit has 2 players who can realistically hold their own in heads-up duels, for an entire series. That's it. Like, I don't trust Zontix to win enough fights. I don't trust Magix. I don't trust Chopper. I trust pretty much every player on the Mongols to go win heads-up fights. So they have a great matchup there.
My understanding is, no matter what happens, they're going to play Mouse in the first game. If they win that, no matter what happens in this FaZe Furia game, they're either playing G2, Spirit, or Liquid, and all 3 of them are entirely winnable.
Yeah, those 3 games are winnable as hell,
Get past Mouse, Mongols are probably, I would honestly say, more likely than not to be in the major final, if I'm going to be entirely honest. Opposition, probably going to be Vitality, but Vitality also have had a very easy go of it in the Swiss stage. Like, yes, they can only beat whoever's in front of them, but it's only shit teams. Like, we have no idea how Vitality would stack up against Mongols in this form that they've had this major.
That's true.
I think they've only played each other once before in a best of 3, and Vitality won that 2-0, but
Yeah.
at some point early in the year. On their side of the bracket, probably going to be Heroic, probably going to be either G2 or Spirit, depending on how the game goes.
Yeah, depending on the seeds, yeah.
Yeah, and probably either Fury or FaZe. So FaZe can maybe take Vitality down. It's one of those things where like I would probably pick FaZe to lose against Mongols, but I wouldn't pick them to beat Vitality, but I would give them a better shot at beating Vitality. It's this weird sort of thing with matchups. Like I don't know. I think Mongols' best hope is if Vitality get knocked out, because if Vitality get knocked out, they can pretty much provably beat anybody else who could be on the other side of the final.
I have them losing to Vitality. Like, that's just... There's no two ways about it. I don't see Mongol beating Vitality. I think Vitality have the calling, the fragging depth, the fragging star. They have so much going right for them that I just don't see it happening. But no, Mongol's path to winning the major is very realistic.
Yes.
Let's be real. Like, Vitality not being as good as we hoped in a best of 3 on stage happens. Like, it happens enough. Like, we know that in theory, on paper, this roster should be competing for every title. Realistically, they should be in every grand final. They have Zaiwu, they have Spinks, Flamesy, they have an IGL who's a bit of a nutcase, but undeniably effective, like when it comes to actually calling a good game. They have a lot of things that we want in a good team. They just struggle to string it together. They struggle to actually deliver the results. That's why, honestly, I think we're seeing that change coming in the next season. Like, Spinks is gone, and it makes sense. It kind of makes sense, considering their target should be era creation. It shouldn't be... we are kind of a good outsider to win most events. Sometimes we fuck up, sometimes we win. That shouldn't be good enough for Vitality. So no, I do expect them to be dangerous here to Mongols.
But their track record against the teams that are going to be on their side of the bracket is not always great. Like, if we're looking at other playoff brackets, in Blast World Final, they lost to G2, who eventually won the event. In the event before that, it was IM Rio. They lost to Mouse in the quarterfinal, who eventually played in the final. Fall final, they lost in the quarterfinal to G2, who ended up winning the event. Even something like ESL Pro League, it's not a huge event, but they did lose in the quarterfinal against Eternal Fire, which is, they aren't here, but I'm just gonna mention that. What is this? Is this the Esports World Cup? Yeah. But they did lose to VP. Like, they don't have when they I mean, we can go as far back as the spring final. I mean, and I'm gonna end it there. They did lose to Spirit 2-1. So like, a lot of the teams that I don't think Mongols is the biggest danger for Vitality, but Mongols do have a decent chance of winning the major simply because they have a good chance of not facing Vitality in the playoffs. I think if that comes to a head, like, I wouldn't put it past Mongols to beat Vitality either. I think they're the toughest ones, but it's not unrealistic that they actually win that matchup. But it's the only one where I would probably not even like pick them in a prediction just for the hell of it, because it would be more fun to be correct than wrong.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I think before we head into your overtime segment, I do think this is a big enough topic that we have to just kind of talk through some of the other playoff teams, like how they've played. I want to start with G2, my other 3-0 pick, because my pick'ems went well. I 6 of 10. The only things I got wrong were G2 and Mongols, the wrong places in terms of who was 3-0, who was 3-1, 3-2. And I got an 0-3 pick of Furia wrong. I regret nothing. And I got... I had both Navi and Heroic going through. Obviously, both couldn't, considering the matchups. So, G2, my other 3-0 pick. Yeah, BO1 lost to Mongols, then pretty comfortable the rest of the way through. Crush big, beat 3-Max convincingly, like, not a crush, but like, just didn't look bothered. And then steamrolled FaZe, like, absolutely demolished FaZe, who are, as I expected, struggling. Really struggling. They're in map 3 now of FaZe Furia. They won Dust 2, thankfully. But no, they got absolutely clattered by G2.
Who wins Mirage?
Mirage, I want FaZe to win. I can't in good conscience guarantee it. For me, it feels like a coin flip. But anyway, so G2, coming to playoffs, 3-1 team. 4 or 5 seed probably is going to be their or is it 3 or 4 seed? Is that Because one of the it's like two teams change place depending on who wins that phase in Furia. And I think it's 3 and 4
probably
seed.
third or fourth. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got a decent seeding going into the playoffs. They're a team with a shot. They're a team with a shot. Like, let's put it that way. They are still crazy stacked in terms of firepower. They haven't looked defeated or deflated, considering this is their last event, probably like as a 5, with definitely Nico being bought out. But again, who knows
what
the hell's going to happen to the entire
Check
team.
the previous episodes if you want to know all
we've
about
had
it.
A lot of conversations about that. So the fact that they don't look deflated here, they've just been very happy to come in and steamroll people, be excited, you know, play with real fire because they know they have a chance to win the major. I think that's cool. We'll see how it plays out in the playoffs in terms of matchups, because I do think, like, yeah, they might struggle against Mongols. Like, that's a real danger. I have them into a Vitality series. It will depend very heavily on who woke up on the right side of the bed. Like, both those teams can peak higher than each other, but also we rarely see them both firing at the same time. So it's usually whoever's had their Weetabix crushes the other. Yeah, G2, your take on this team. Do you see them as favorite, second favorite? Like, roughly where do you have them? If you had to put them amongst the top teams, like, where would you have them for the major?
Like, with a bracket in major, I would probably say that they have a tough run. I think if FaZe closes out, they have Vitality. Otherwise, they have Mongols, both of which are. I mean, honestly, past games would probably say that they have a better track record against Vitality than against Mongols. But yeah, I think I'd probably put them about third, maybe if I was making a ranked list. But in terms of who I think is winning, but they're so weird to me because we keep talking about, like, oh, they can be outcalled by anybody. They're relying on fragging, and then they just keep closing series. And I'm just sort of wondering if maybe this, like, they do seem a little bit streaky, and it kind of depends on. For me, it kind of depends on where that streak hits, because it could just as well start and end in the group stage as well as it could start and end in the playoffs, like for this year. Because G2 can look super shaky and then end up in playoffs and absolutely stomp everybody. And then, like, they can have, you know, if we're just talking about the last event, they got 13-0'd in their first map of the event by Liquid. They got absolutely destroyed by Liquid. They played a very close series against Spirit, but then, you know, come playoffs, you know, even then they're playing close games. They just about beat Astralis, and then, you know, final happens and they sweep Spirit. So it's kind of hard to pick them right now. They do seem a bit up and down. It's very high peaks and sometimes quite low lows. So I honestly don't know. I think maybe there could be a stage factor. Let's not forget, this would be Mobs' first major. It would be his first major playoff. Mm-hmm. It's the first time he's playing on a stage this big. I think, honestly, I'm not sure if I can't remember if they made playoffs in Cologne, because that would probably have been about as big if we're talking crowd size. Yeah, okay, they went to the quarterfinal, but yeah, it's going to be. That's a factor. There's also the last dance factor, which can also, like, that thing, like the phenomenon, which is like the last dance sort of thing. Where it's like, you know, something is happening and you're just playing out the contract pretty much. You're playing out this roster. That can swing in so many ways, because sometimes you're playing by the pressure, you know that this season maybe doesn't really matter. But I think that is also partially, they might also have the thought that we're finally going to get Nico's major, and that's an additional bit of pressure. And, you know, this is all, it's kind of an ebb and flow that's really hard to predict. But to answer your question, I think I would put them maybe third in my list. Second or third. It really, maybe even fourth. It honestly depends, because if Spirit, it's hard to put Spirit in a place as well. Right. This bracket is really difficult.
Yeah, I have a bit of a concern for G2. Just, it's not that big a deal. It's just that so far I was just looking through the FTU numbers, and their T side, they have the best T side round win rate. I mean, sure, they've not played that many games, but still, let's look at it. The best T side round win rate of the major. They're doing that with the third lowest opening kill rate, because they're winning 60% of 4v5s. And they're like, yeah, come on. You can't just be guaranteed a multi-kill in every round, sort of just salvage an opening death. And it's, you know, these numbers have reflected most poorly, obviously, on Malbs, who is taking the majority of their opening volume. He is dying far more than he usually is on these openings. but they're trading them out. They're somehow making it into round win after round win. I mean, m0NESY has been the most clutch T player this year, pretty much, especially this season. He's been outstanding on the T side, recovering rounds in a way almost no other AWPer can. Not even ZywOo has been as impactful in the mid to late round on T side, especially not with an AWP in his hands. So that's a tool they're going to have just forever. Nico has absolutely bullied people at this event so far, especially on the CT side. His T side play has not been great, but CT side he's just bullying everyone. So they are very comfortably winning, despite a little bit of a blip. I'd consider it on the T side, like just not being able to find openings. But I don't know how consistent that is, because as a true Malbs believer, I don't see that lasting. Like, there's no way he loses that many opening fights over the course of the entire major. Like, especially with the playoffs, it's going to be tough. They're going to need him to be in top form, and they're going to need to change those numbers up. But I feel it's still a very real option for them to go win this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Heading into that, I kind of wanted to talk about if we can both predict who we think is going to be the major champion. Yeah. And for fear of you taking my pick, I would still like you to go first, because I think I have a bit of a banger here.
Okay. Well, for a second there, I thought you were about to steal it, and I was about to slam down the "but I'm French" card. So I get to pick Vitality. Fuck you. I get Vitality. Hey, here it is. I play the French card in attack mode. Like, so yes, the Vitality pick is the right one for me. I haven't seen them really tested so far at this major, but look, they absolutely cruised through the RMR. They cruised through the opening stage. Sorry, elimination stage. Technically did cruise past the opening stage. I see them as, now that NAVI are out, arguably the best team of the season, given they won the biggest event that isn't the major. Yeah, Vitality in my pick. I think they have a good matchup with Mongols on the route there. And let's face some teams who I consider be slightly inferior. And I'm about to sneeze, so please fill in the rest.
What I'm going to say to counter that is, it's been a while since Vitality won what I'm going to call just a tough game. Like, since they've beaten a very strong opponent. I'm just looking through the matches right now. And this is going to tie into a later point as well. Vitality at this major, they've played MIBR, they've played Furia, they played Gamer Legion. We've talked about this. This is an easy bracket. In the RMR, they played FaZe, they played BetPuma, and they played Gamer Legion. Also, honestly, relatively easy. Even with how FaZe is struggling, they probably didn't go in with the maximum amount of pressure just because they were playing FaZe at that point. They lost to G2 in a grand final. They beat Mouse, they beat Liquid. They lost to Spirit in a group stage game. They lost to Mouse in a playoff game. They lost to Heroic in a seeding game. They beat Mongols, they beat 9Z. I'm not really seeing too many games where they beat a team like G2, who are probably going to be one of the big hurdles they need to overcome to win this major. There's no, like, and this is going to tie into a second point, which is something which I think Flamesy spoke about in one of those roundtables they did. Yeah, I would say, honestly, the last time they beat an opponent who is more or less at their level, like a proper elite opponent, top 3 candidate, that was in the Cologne final in August. Since then, they've lost several times to G2 in high-pressure games. They've even lost to Mouse, who have sort of been teetering on that, consistent playoff edge. And then they've just sort of played FaZe, Liquid, Heroic, and that's about as tough as it's gotten for Vitality. So this is going to tie into a point which I think Flamesy spoke about in the Cologne roundtable, that over the course of their spring season, he said that their biggest weakness basically is that they think too highly of themselves. They get overconfident, and they don't go into these super important games with the biggest amount of prep because they think, well, we're the best team in the world, we're going to win this. And they sort of under prep. They don't really put enough pressure on themselves. I do wonder, like, I am not picking Vitality for this prediction. I can see why you would. They're looking stellar, and I can see why you would. But I think they're looking as the best team to win the major because of a lack of weaknesses more so than an abundance of strengths. Because you compare them to G2, you compare them to Spirit, you compare them to Navi and Mouse, and they look the best just because they're on the other teams. You can pick a lot of holes why they wouldn't win the major.
Yeah, I can pick holes on Vitality though. I do it all the time on the double swing. They do have issues with, honestly, just composure on the big stage. It's a variety of reasons why, probably, but the one we always point to is there's a part of their demeanor, like the way Apex reacts to things. They seem very emotional, volatile in that sense. But the problem is, whilst they are volatile, their upswing is so big. Like when they are in the right frame of mind and they are, they're tilted and aggressive in a positive way. When they're actually channeling it towards winning, no one can beat them. Like realistically, in this field this year, no one has everything that Vitality does, but they need to be in that right frame. And I think there's no way for them to be coming into this expecting to be the best team in the world and under-preparing because they haven't won a damn thing since Cologne. There's just no world where that manifests. So I see this as the perfect event for them to actually.
Well, that wasn't the case in the spring. That wasn't really the case in the spring season either. But that's still what sort of flames the year.
But they still had enough prior success in the year before to believe it. There's a difference.
I just mean they're on a good streak. They've won a lot of games. There's very few losses in their track record leading up to the major. And I'm sure like consciously, yes, they realize that we haven't played the best of opposition always, and we've won all the games that we definitely should have won. But subconsciously, you might just be feeling, yes, we're on a great win streak. Yes, we've won most of our games. Your lizard brain, so to speak, might not realize that you're playing Gamer Legion. If to use that sort of analogy. But yeah, that's just sort of my feeling. I feel that maybe it's just the same as this major was primed for Navi to choke. I think now it's primed for Vitality to choke. And I am sort of expecting just one more choke out of one of these teams.
Okay, so now that you're talking chokes, these teams are going to choke. All right, pick Heroic, just do it. We all know you're going to. There's no pressure on them to win it. They can't choke. So come on. Who's your take?
Mongols.
I think Mongols win the major. I honestly I can understand when I said G2 were third or fourth, I wasn't putting Mouse or Spirit above them. I was putting Mongols above them. Because I honestly think that they have a favorable bracket. They have a lot of winnable games. They probably have one of the best track records against their opposition compared to the other teams. Not a lot. Like they don't.
They just don't face any of them instead of make playoffs.
But when they do face them, they do play upper half. If I'm comparing to Liquid Heroic, they never win these games. Furia, they never win these games. FaZe haven't won these games in a long time. FaZe are going out in quarters if they go through. I can't put it any other way. But if I'm comparing to Liquid Heroic, Furia, even Mouse to some degree, I think I have to put Mongols above. But I also just think that Vitality will choke. Vitality will not make it to the final. And that's where Mongols are going to be. And they're going to play G2 or Spirit. And that's entirely winnable. And I'm just I'm the storyline guy. I can't not predict the home Asian major win.
Yeah, here's the problem. Here's the massive problem. And I brought this up on my video on Friday.
Go ahead.
Mongol style is very, very beatable. In the sense that, honestly, they give you the chance to beat them. They put themselves on the platter for you to beat them. You just have to be able to hit the shots. And, well, they also have to hit them, but this event, they've been hitting all of them. So I'm just going to keep it towards the other side. You guys have to frag them. There's so much that can go wrong with that in this bracket. There are, beyond facing, FaZe, Furia, and then in the final Liquid, somehow, if that was to be your bracket, yeah, sure, I'd have them as favorites as well. But instead, we know if it's based on book holes, they're playing Mouse round one. I'm sorry, I have them out in quarters. I just don't see it happening. Unless we see another historic Mouse choke, I have them out in quarters. At that point, afterwards, they have to face who? G2? Potentially?
Yep.
Or Spirit, whoever ends up being the 4 seed. Again, a game where, whilst they do have, I think, a better chance, they have to then again go out and with their very boom or bust style win again. So no, I don't see Mongols winning as a very realistic pick. I see them honestly beating Mao's might be realistic just because Mao's might choke, but
Yeah.
I think that's the worst matchup and they have to start with it. And I don't see them having a positive win chance against anyone else. Like I see them against Mao's. In theory, if we didn't have the stage aspect, like a 30% chance. We have the stage aspect, so I'll make it 35. And then after that, they're best at like a 45% against a G2, against, because I don't think Liquid are going to make it that far. I don't think Heroic are going to make it into a matchup with them. So they don't get the chance to play those teams. I do think they're gonna come up short. It's gonna be awesome. It's already awesome. They've made playoffs.
It's already
major.
awesome.
Like,
it
right?
is amazing.
Winning one series in playoffs would then be insane for the vibe, for the story, for the Mazzinho celebration. Like, it's gonna be all so awesome. But I don't quite believe in it. I wish I shared your optimism, but I don't. I don't really.
I mean, look, like I do realize this is a long shot. But this bracket is even enough where, like, I think we could see half the quarterfinals be just straight upsets. Honestly, it's even enough where things changed on a major stage. Like, so many things just change once you get to a major stage. Where NAVI ended up winning Copenhagen. Like, once you get to that stage, so many things are different. Where, like, I can't even write off a team like Liquid or Heroic because. Heroic maybe, but Liquid, I can't even fully write Liquid out of the conversation because there are just like players like NAF and like Twists who like thrive on that sort of stage setup. Like JKS, can you imagine how JKS feels being back in a playoff game, like in a major playoff game?
Yeah, these guys thrive. It's why they've won so many majors, Grand Slams, Colognes, all that. I mean, except for 2019, these guys have just filled up their cabinet with all these big trophies. Yeah, they thrive.
I just mean we have a bracket of big game players. Like, so, like, I can't even fully write like Liquid out of a conversation of making a final. Like, if Liquid could make a final. It's really hard. So I think we could see unexpected playoffs in the quarters, and I think honestly, if Mongols win that mouse game, every single upset game elsewhere in the bracket is gonna benefit them, and
definitely.
Yeah, and there's gonna be upset games. I refuse to believe that we get a Copenhagen bracket where. More or less, we didn't really have. We did have some upsets, but it did also feel like most.
I mean, Copenhagen, we had upsets. Like Spirit come into the quarterfinals ill and lose. That was an upset. We had NAVI beating pretty much anyone they beat is an upset because they were NAVI at the time and not NAVI right now.
They had Eternal Fire in the quarter.
That's maybe that's
lost.
Fair, but yeah.
Yeah, like G2 won the game against the Stage Jokers. NAVI beat Eternal Fire. FaZe Spirit, sure, Spirit should have won that. Vitality beat Cloud9 without an AWPer. FaZe beat Vitality is I can't even remember what it was like then.
No, it's not really an upset because FaZe at this point was still good.
At this point, FaZe were good. Vitality were a little bit here and there. Like this was basically the matchup of the two best teams of the 2023 fall season.
Essentially. So it wasn't that ridiculous.
It wasn't that ridiculous. Like they were really strong, both of them. And then NAVI G2, that is probably an upset, but it was also G2 with Nexa at that point. G2 hadn't won anything in a while.
But it's Nico, isn't it? It's Nico.
Yeah.
He gets that credit. Right. He gets that aura. He gets that big time games. That man made a final with Amanek as his AWPer. He made a major final with Amanek as his AWPer. He gets all the credit in the world. If he wants credit,
I'm just gonna say I think we see out of the 7 games that are going to be played in the playoffs, I think we see 3 or 4 of them being upsets, and all of that. I just think we do because I think this is even enough where it would be. It's if you play 7 games with 50-50 odds, the odds of all of them going to the favorites is like.
But they're not 50-50 odds because there's favorites and there's underdogs, so there's not 50-50. So you think there's going to be 3 or 4 upsets? Yo, bet on it. Bet on the underdog in every single game. I don't recommend anyone else do this, but Quack seems to think it will happen. So let Quack do it. Quack, go nuts.
No,
put your life savings.
Even if you put it to like 60-40, like even if you put it to that, the chances of it being all favorites is just always so low. You have to predict that there's going to be. You have to predict there's going to be 1, 2, 3 upsets, and I think we're going to be towards the upper end of that. And every single one of those games being an upset is going to benefit Mongols, just on principle. And at that point, so I'm just going to say, I don't I've done this. I speak about statistics. I don't think Mongols are the statistically most likely team to win the event. But if I'm gonna put a bet in, if I'm gonna put my reputation on the line and say who I think is winning the major, I'm gonna say the Mongols, because if I'm right,
Yeah.
I just see it. I just see it. Like I just see it. I just see it. See it in my eyes.
All right, get off the spice melange and let's get into the small site retakes, because we are 45 minutes in. And I'm going to let you lead off because you've got another major related topic, and I need to go put some socks on because my feet are cold because this flat's freezing. So take it away. I will be able to hear you the entire time.
Excellent. We had I put an opinion piece out earlier this week, just yesterday actually, which it's about different cities where you could host a major, and because this major is the first one. I actually calculated this. This is the first major hosted in a time zone further east than GMT +2. We have never had a major further east than this. So we've had late evenings during like North American, South American majors, but we've never had this early mornings. And I think a lot of European viewers
hate the fuck out of it. To be fair to Perfect World, legally they couldn't actually do much about it. I mean, I was obviously tilted, but then I saw some people explaining it, like in Shanghai, because the CCP, great freedom, liberal government, lets people not stay out, gives them the freedom to go home before getting beaten. So, yeah, you can't really do an event that late. Your event hall is not allowed to be open that late.
Yeah. Even with that, I do think, like, I see so many people like crying about this, and then all of the Australian and Asian viewers are like, "Yeah, this is what we do all year." I think that's fair to them.
Yeah,
we can have a major. Yeah. We can have a major in East Asia. That's fine by me. But it did make it probably more people than ever are actually thinking about where could we host a major, because we have Austin coming up, which has already been
Joe Rogan's secret fucking stage host. Come on,
dude! If Joe Rogan appears at the Austin major,
he's so funny.
I will shit bricks.
Exactly. And that's why it'd be so funny.
Like, I wouldn't even put Blast. Like, Blast would absolutely put Joe Rogan on the major stage to like announce it. Imagine if they did, like, Joe Rogan. He does the UFC casting and stuff. Like, he does all that. What if he was like the in-arena caster?
Bring him in as a play-by-play. Yo, I'll be his color. Joe Rogan, if you need a color caster, I'll teach you everything. I'll go on the Joe Rogan experience. I'll take edibles or whatever the fuck like you do. I'll do an ice bath. I'll get on HGH. Like, I'll do all that shit. I'll be your color caster. Joe Rogan play-by-play at the major.
Imagine
like someone gets headshot and he's just like, oh, whoa!
Imagine an indoor arena filled to the brim, and he just like it's an eco round, and he goes, "Jamie, pull that up." Like, like imagine that. Anyway,
I bring up eco round stats, and that's when he goes, "Yeah, Jamie, pull that up."
Yeah, Jamie, pull that up. Yeah. There's another thing about that. Fall 2025 major has been rumored to be in Budapest, which is
pretty cool,
I guess. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think we have missed out on the perfect major hosting city in Europe for all of the European majors we've had, and the perfect one is Prague. We should go to Prague. That's what my opinion piece was about. So just to briefly recap that, in case you don't want to read it, but you should go read it. Prague, great tourist destination. All of the major cities we've had have been, well, more or less, all of them have been pretty good tourist destinations to begin with. We've had Paris, we have had Berlin, London, Rio de Janeiro, even Shanghai. Like, if you go to China, you probably go to Shanghai.
I go to Beijing, but okay. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a couple, but Shanghai is definitely one of them. Then we've also had Katowice. If you go to Sweden, you go to Stockholm. Like, we have these different. Most people do if you come.
Yeah, they do. They do.
The country. Yeah, we've had the tourist destinations. Like, I think it's important for the major to be in a big city, which is also like you don't have to go to Jönköping to go see a Counter-Strike major.
But Jönköping's got so many things. It's got DreamHack.
No, it doesn't anymore. Jönköping,
it doesn't even have DreamHack.
Yeah, no, it's all in Stockholm.
A lake. And it has shit weather. What more could you want?
It has an O'Leary's. You can go to O'Leary's and have a couple of pints.
I've been to the O'Leary's, yeah.
Yeah.
Not great.
I got crushed in bowling when I was there. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, that's one of the things. Prague is that. Prague is an excellent tourist destination, both summer and winter. I want to go to Prague. It's nice. Everything is cheap. it's like super popular as like, oh, you've just graduated high school and you want to go on a 2-week summer trip with your best mates, you go to either Australia or Prague. Like it's kind of like, that's kind of the vibe I have. Like you go to Prague, you cheap beer, cheap living, everything.
Oh,
Just live
I
your
need
best
to.
life.
So I've been to Prague once, yes,
Yep.
just once.
Yep.
Trying to remember, and it was fun because I went to a supermarket whilst I was there, and I'd already been around. Like I have a friend, I know a couple guys who live out there. One guy, like basically every evening, took me out drinking. Like he took me around different bars, and we went out drinking, and we had a blast of a time. But when I was out, I was realizing, yo, these pints, these like not pints, they're technically half a liter because they're not on the imperial system.
Yeah.
But these big old beers are costing me between like €1.50 and €2.10. Like, and at that point, my Czech tour guide is complaining about how expensive this bar is, and I'm just like, yo, this is a great problem to have.
Never, if he thinks that's expensive, never leave Czechia.
Never leave Czechia.
Never in his life.
Maybe go to like Serbia, I guess. But like, as far as I'm aware, as far as I care, awesome prices. But then I went to the supermarket. Right, I'd been out to the bars. I went to the supermarket. Now, for a liter of water, I could have got 2 liters of beer. What is this?
Yeah, what is this?
I almost cried. I was like, "Can we buy some?" It's like you don't even have a like luggage to put it in. What would you do with it? I'm gonna drink it all. It's 10 a.m. I don't care. What an insane country! Look. It's going to be rowdy as hell if they do a major there. But it's a nation that I think, more importantly, a city, a scene that deserves it. Given the dedication they've had to their Counter-Strike's like ecosystem, the lands they run, they've had a really like invested population. Let's put it that way. In Counter-Strike. And yes, it's the sort of nation that should have one. And Prague is the good city for it because it's not too big. I hate it when the major's in like Paris, London, because as soon as you leave the event hall, it feels like everyone just scatters into the wind because it's too big. Antwerp was beautiful. You left the arena, you couldn't go almost anywhere in Antwerp without finding Counter-Strike people. I'm talking fans, talent, players. Like when I was out there, me and my friend, we walked past an Ice Cream shop and just met the entirety of FaZe. Like it was absurd. There's like one big high street and that's where everything is. And so it felt like Counter-Strike ran that city. And Prague is bigger than Antwerp, but it's not too huge to the point where I think like the importance of it would be lost. Like we'd still kind of own the city for a weekend. Sorry, all those drunk motherfuckers on stag doos trying to throw up in each other's like cowboy hats. We're taking over Prague. If we take Prague for a Counter-Strike major, I think it'd be awesome.
Yes. So it's a nice place. If you're not a party animal, it's also just a nice place. Like there's a lot of stuff to do. It's like it's a really old medieval city. Yeah, it has the oldest running clock. I found out while researching.
Astronomical clock.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff to do. Second, it needs to have a strong interest for esports and Counter-Strike. This is why Sweden was perfect, France was perfect, even Germany was perfect for various majors because we always had this. Poland, of course, we've had. So, like, even after the era of like just repeating Cologne, Katowice, and DreamHack Winter, we've had 2 majors in Poland because we had Krakow and Katowice again, just because Poland loves Counter-Strike. You might not think this based on their level of international success, but Czechia has a pretty strong Counter-Strike interest. And like the biggest element in this is probably one of the coolest LAN tournaments that is run periodically these days is the PlayZone Tipsport Cup.
Yeah.
You might have seen this. It runs at this point. It runs 4 times in a year. It runs once every season. It is basically it's an amazing cup, and they run it in like to me it looks a little bit like a bit of an Inferno online kind of space. It's like a gamer space where if you're not running a big event there, you're probably just having it open as like a LAN hall, like a gaming hall. You can book a time, you can play some games, you can have some fun. Looks like a really nice lounge kind of thing. And the fact that you can run this sort of thing and host big events where you fill the entire place up and like you have all of these Czech teams who are always at the edge of the top 50 in the world, with like you have Sinners, you have Eklot, you have Unity. Like 3 of these teams showed up to the RMR. You have some Slovakian teams who also show up. It's a really cool event. It's really good production value, and there's obviously a lot of Counter-Strike fans. I have a friend. He just kind of went there. Like I was like, yo, there's a thing happening in Prague right now. It's a Czech event. You should go there. And he just went there. Just went in, took a couple of pictures. Like it's a really cool thing. that interest exists. You have a gaming interest, you have an esports interest. People love Counter-Strike there. So that's one of the other hallmarks that a city hosting a major needs to have. I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be possible. Well, it would be possible. I don't think it would be particularly successful to host a Counter-Strike major in Tokyo. You could get people there. There's just
no Counter-Strike interest in Tokyo. Let's be real.
There is no local crowd. Like, there's going to be no local fans showing up, because that's been a big part of this Shanghai major. We have, sure, there's a crap ton of people in China, but they also show up for Counter-Strike. Like, right now, the entire crowd we've had so far is all Chinese, because they only sold tickets to Chinese citizens, because they knew that we only have about 3,000 seats or so. And they've still been managed to filling this. And speaking of filling crowds, third, we need indoor arenas. Counter-Strike needs to be played indoors for obvious reasons. You cannot play on Camp Nou, unfortunately, as awesome as that would be. Actually, if we could do that, if we could play outdoors, Prague has an excellent option. The biggest football arena in Europe, 220,000 people being seated there. And I forget what the name of it is. It's something Gudjechuk, something like that. It's where Sparta Prague play. Anyway, they do have indoor arenas. Czechia is a big hockey nation, and hockey also is played indoors, the ice. And they have the O2 Arena, built for the World Cup in ice hockey in 2004, and it seats 18,000 people. You can get people into Prague, and you can fill an arena watching Counter-Strike.
I need to find out, which stadium you believe is in the Czech Republic with 200,000 people, because the biggest one, allegedly, according to Wikipedia, is 20. And so I don't know where
outdoor. Outdoor.
Yeah,
arena,
this is outdoor.
No,
I don't know
what
where
the
you're
fuck?
finding. I don't know what you're looking at, bud.
In that case, I have a factual error in my piece. Hang on.
Because the biggest football stadium isn't that big.
I will find the name of it. Maybe it's like closed, because I definitely put the name of it in my article, and I definitely looked it up in Wikipedia. Wikipedia has lied to me in that case. Never used.
You're talking about the horse racing stadium?
I am talking about the Velký Strahovský Stadium.
What the fuck?
Which is in Prague. It's in English, Great Strahov Stadium. It is a stadium which seats 250,000 people. Seats 56,000, but it has a capacity of 250,000.
It's literally the size of multiple football pitches. It's not a.
Yes, it has 9 football pitches. Yeah.
Can't put a Counter-Strike.
But no, you could. You can't. You can't.
You can't just put a football game there. It's too big.
You can play 9 football games there. Excellent.
Yeah, that's why you can't run one, because you'd have too much space. This is absurd.
I just thought it would be awesome if you could play Counter-Strike outdoors. Honestly, if you just have a great weather forecast.
It would be amazing if we could run not a Counter-Strike major there, that specific place. If we could run esports outside, you could run a pretty cool ESWC like type multiple esports in the same sort of box space with like people choosing where to sit. You could not run a single esports event, like a singular one. That would be absurd and kind of wasteful. But no, okay.
Scientists, get to work on waterproof desktop PCs, so we can
also are not affected by any
sort
of glare or change of light level or anything else. Yeah, magical screens, please. But all right, Prague.
That's my bottom line. We should go to Prague. I want to go to Prague. There should be a major in Prague. The final point: logistics. Even without the arenas, it's literally it's smack dab in the fucking middle. You can go. There's direct flights from every major European city. The driving distance, like the distance by land, is about the same between Stockholm, Madrid, and Istanbul. Like, it's right in the middle of Europe.
Yeah,
I think if you took like the literal middle of Europe by, I would honestly guess population density. It's probably Prague. Like, it probably is.
No idea. But anyway, no, I
don't fact check me on this.
I'm not going to, because every time I do, you're wrong. So let's just wrap it up with me saying, I think it's a good sized city, has great esports interest, especially Counter-Strike related. They have the ability to get shit-faced, which I think is a benefit, especially on a good, cheap budget, but also genuinely has a lot of history. Prague is one of the cultural bastions of Europe, with such deep history, in terms of the people there as groups, peoples as individuals, writers, politicians, influential people across the 20th century and a little bit beyond, earlier than that as well. It's a really cool city. So no, I recommend it as a place as well. Onto my small site Retake. I want to talk about sort of, it's not the death of the women's scene, because it's not dead. Not yet. But it's more the undeath of it, as it just continues to, like a zombie, it's like always dying yet technically alive. Because it's become a bit of a topic across the last few days, from women tweeting about it on Twitter, obviously, but generally a point of conversation across the scene. There's no other big tournament organizer in the women's space. Now, the Impact League has been huge. It saved the women's scene. Like that's the lightning strike that reanimated that corpse. Like, let's be real. It was about to fade into nothingness. All the women were going to go play Valorant, which thankfully they don't have to. Thank you, Impact, for that. You've saved them from the torture of having to play Valorant child game. That's cool. But since then, there's been no real other organization willing to throw that money in. We've had the Trade It Masters FE League, which is online, and it's cool, but it's, again, not a big addition. And we've seen nothing from people like PGL, nothing from Blast, and a lot of people were excited for potentially a Blast sort of circuit for the women's scene, a few events. Yep. Nothing's come through, and that's led to a lot of orgs essentially having to constantly dip in and out of the women's scene, or just leave entirely because they couldn't sustain rosters, because they weren't able to be successful enough in just Impact. That was the only option, was to be good in Impact. And another problem that's been kind of an offshoot of this is Impact having no competition has led to them being quite lazy. Like, they still maintain the same, like, kind of crappy formats. They don't put much effort into, I think, improving the experience when it comes to watching these games. I'm watching BO1, like GSL, like I used to back in 2016 or 2015. Like, these are old formats that we don't use anymore for good reason. And with MR12 especially, BO1s shouldn't exist, let alone in an event where you play 1BO1, then you're straight to elimination or progression. Like, that's absurd. So there's a need for more competition in that space in terms of the organizations, the TOs. There's a need for more prize pools to be able to be won, like more availability for on-screen time if you're an org, to be able to show off your sponsors, say that, hey, it is worth giving me, like, this side, like, extra pocket change to sponsor a women's team. Like, if you're talking to your main sponsor, like, oh yeah, we also have this team, you want to get on their jerseys? You need to be able to sell it, because those jerseys, if it's all online games, are not going to be on stage. They're not going to be on stream. No one's going to give a toss. So it's kind of a problem that unfortunately doesn't have a magical solution, because the women's scene has not been able to grow since the start of Impact, like, in any significant, impactful way. Like, sure, when Gaulesh streams a Furia FE game, the average viewership technically across all streams goes up to 80k, but, like, we all know that's not real. We all know that's not actual growth. You know, Brazilian nationalism on their top streamer is not the same thing as the entire scene having a boost in interest. And I think a part of it has to do with the fact that Impact are the only TO, and they don't ever do, I think, enough to really promote the players themselves, the storylines, like the big narratives. I don't think they have enough incentive to either, considering they don't have competition. And all of this just kind of factors into itself, like, kind of dying. And some of the women have been kind of critical of themselves, I think, in these tweets. Like, saying they haven't been active enough, voicing their opinions, voicing their distaste is the wrong word, but their frustration with the fact that there isn't another TO coming in to actually give them an event to play. But I think the solution long term is kind of rough. Like, I don't see what it actually is. Like, do you just bully TOs into joining, or do you make yourselves more sellable, like promotable? And that's been a conversation I've been trying to have for a while, like talking about women getting on their socials, because a lot of them have decent streams, they have decent social media presences, but you don't ever get that coming across in the actual events. Like, it's partially on the TOs, partially on the players. Like, we need to see that stuff. That the stuff that sells needs to be put to the fore, because we've known historically it's not just going to be the game. You're not going to be able to sell the Counter-Strike community on watch us play the game. That part typically has not been very successful. But selling people on storylines, narratives, characters, personalities has been the way. It hasn't really been done very successfully. So I'm concerned that we're just going to still see the women's scene just kind of kept alive by this sort of zombification created by Impact. And if they ever really want to evolve and grow, it's going to be a concerted effort, not from them exclusively, but also from across other TOs. And it may start simply with small organizers, like small online events, eventually convince someone to bring in another LAN. Because since the death of Copenhagen Games, there's been no other option.
No. No, I think it's a real shame. I absolutely thought that it would be a matter of time before Blast came in, thought that we have to compete with ESL on this. And maybe the reason is that ESL have just done a bad enough job. Blast feel like there's no reason to compete here because they're not even winning when they're alone, so to speak.
It is. It's almost more of a charity than a real profitable tournament. Like it's not, not pulling in the views.
No, I don't have the numbers in front of me. They, for the first time ever, they put it on the ESL mainstream, which I do think would have been a prerequisite for the league. I think that should have been a bare minimum. If you could have put them on an ESL CS mainstream on Twitch, the first time you do it is literally the only time ESL have nothing else going on. There's no ESEA. They weren't hosting the major, and the RMR was going on, and they were like, "Yeah, we can chuck it on the mainstream." Like, there's times when they would rather run a rerun of an IEM game of some sort rather than play an Impact game which is going on live. I just think that they've done way too poor a job. I think it would have been so easy for another TO to come in and do a better job. Probably, I'm not sure what the key is to make it profitable, but so much is hinging on just ESL's, own whim at this point, where it's not really looking good. And we're gonna get to this in Shuffle as well. We have some teams pulling out.
Yeah,
still
we do, and that's kind of fueled it, right? It's the more teams pulling out, everyone's just all of a sudden been like, yeah, we kind of have to see why, and this is essentially it. Like,
yeah.
But it's not even about profitable, really. It's about viable, like just viable. Like you're not going to make that big a profit. It's esports. Like, let's be real. If you want to make make a profit, open a laundromat. Like, this is esports. You're not going to make a profit. Like, it's not the be all end all every year.
Nobody's going into this industry to look to be profitable, and I don't think that was the goal of the Impact League either. But yeah, it's we do need more. Like, we need other TOs. There's some TOs who have spoken out now who have said, I think Atlas is not a tournament organizer we in CS would be interested in, but they are a production company who runs some Halo stuff, I think. And they basically said for 2025, we are investing in CS in a greater degree. That's nice, but like, I would have expected Relog to do something. Relog and Grid, who I believe are behind both CCT. I can never remember. Relog Media, and then there's also Fisher. And then there's also Grid, which I think is just a sponsor, but also produces some events on its own. The entire Tier 2 circuit, basically. You have all of these, like CCT, you have RES, you have all of these LAN events that we've seen. Sky Esports, they wanted to look good for once. They could have made a women's event. If you like, we have Star Ladder probably coming in for next year.
Well, they did, didn't they? Sky Esports did one women's event, didn't they? Am I going crazy?
Oh, they might have done.
Pretty sure they did.
They absolutely might have done, but I don't think it was on HLTV.
They did one. Let me see. Sky Esports. CS2 Women's Championship.
I mean, it might have been. Was it the WD Black Cup? No, that was all Indian. Anyway, like, there's a lot of different production companies who could have done it. Trade It are the sponsor who have started doing it, and that's cool. But it's just like, that thing is super weird. Like, they put together all of the women's teams, and I actually like that. They invite more than just the existing Impact teams. They also invite a couple of other teams. Let me actually see. It's all invites. There's no qualifier, but they invite teams like EK Violet have played in it. They've invited teams like Crescent before they actually made it into Impact League, I believe. And then some other ones like K10 Ashes. You might have heard of them. Permitta's female team also before they came in. Saw Mist. Like, they've been grinding it out in these lower tiers as a Portuguese. And they ended up in this event. I actually like that. But then they had some dubious administration with how they refereed the event, and it's in large part a bit of a nothing event. Like you get a very small prize pool, basically the same as one of the ESEA or as one of the Impact Cash Cups, and a bunch of skins. Like they pay them with skins, and then you have some investment in like Brazil. I think CBCS, which I think is like the esports federation in Brazil, more or less, the people who run the national teams. They also run some stuff locally. There's some investment here and there. I just really wish we could have had like the big actors, because go on Liquipedia and go on the page which is titled "Female Tournaments." If you can find it somehow and scroll through it. It is all ESL Impact pretty much there, and then there's the odd actor you've never heard of or a national team event which nobody cares about.
Yeah, pretty much for the year. There has been, I can't find anything about Sky Esports, I must be imagining things, but there's been one European Pro League female season this year, been Trader FE, I'm talking non-Impact stuff, and then we had the IESF women's. That's about it outside of the actual Impact League itself. So
yeah, that's what we have internationally. Then everything else is basically
very localized.
Yeah, very localized. There was a North American wild card qualifier for the Thunderpick World Championship, and that's so weird because they basically said we're gonna put for the Thunderpick World qualifier World Championship, we're gonna have a specific qualifier for 2 female teams to come in as wild cards, which is just super weird. But that's like, why didn't Thunderpick just do a second? That's Grid as well, who's organizing that. Why didn't Grid just do a separate Thunderpick World Championship? You could have run it in the same arena. Like you could have run it at the same time as you were in Berlin doing the thing within the cool like bowl. That's cool. That's super cool. Why didn't they just do that? You didn't need to add the $750,000 prize pool to the women's event. You could have done 20,000. That would still be bigger than most of these other events. It would just be super cool. Like I don't know. It's super weird, and I just wish we had more. I hope we get more for 2025. I do hope that there's an incentive from PGL or Skyladder, or probably not Yala Cup, but or sorry, what are they called? Yala Compass. Yeah,
I know. I'll be curious to see what happens. I still think, without competition, Impact League are not going to produce like a better product because there's no real incentive to it. They're basically just running old dream hacks as women's events, and that's it. No, obviously, it's a shame. I think there's still a lot of interesting narratives to be explored in the women's scene.
Hell yeah.
A lot of conversation that could be happening, but instead, no one really knows what's going on. So we'll see what happens next year. Hopefully, something more comes to be, and some of the orgs return. But for now, let's move on to a special edition of the tiers.
Yes.
The King's tiers, even. Please, Lord above, this tier list has more segments, so yes, okay, good. It's not gone wrong. The tiers are there. Let me just give Quacke the finalized list before I start launching. I went a bit off the rails with this one, I'm going to be honest.
Christ.
Yeah. So, this is not a team tier list. This is going to be my IGL tier list for the elimination stage. Most of this, or all of this, was decided prior to these 2-2 matchups. So if anything in your head looks whack because of how the tier 2, the 2-2 games ended, that is what it is. There's also a very interesting theme, which I'm happy with 6 of 7 of the theme titles. One of them, it's fine. It's fine. We'll go into it. Let's just launch into this. Right. Let's start with the bottom tier. Now, this is the M&M tier. And this is the tier where, these guys still kind of get the respect and admiration that comes off the back of really past glories. The guys in here are Snacks and Fallen. Like, they are not now, today, where they used to be. But because of who they used to be in the past, Fallen with LGSK as an IGL and AWPA still gets the respect for that. Snacks gets it from being part of historically Virtus Pro, not really as an IGL at all. He doesn't get anything. I hear people say whack shit like, oh, he gets You know, he did his time in Tier 2, bro played like 6 months of Tier 2 Counter-Strike, wasn't great, and just got magically promoted. That was the most fake earning it I've ever seen. It is all based off former glory. Now, they are still at a decent level here. Like, you're in the top 16. But I'm just a bit... I think these guys are a bit fraudulent. It's a bit unearned. The next tier. This is a tier of people who are... They're not brilliant yet. And they may never become brilliant because there's key flaws in them. But they are pretty good. Like, they can show some pretty good stuff. This tier... There's Twists, Drop, ZTR. I think they still have a lot to prove. The best work is ahead of them. Denzel Curry. I don't care what everyone else on the underground hip-hop scene says. I still think his best work is yet to come. Everything I listen to feels a bit raw, unfinished, not fully thought out. And that's kind of these guys. They are still quite new to the IGL game. Some more than others. Others just kind of young. Like Drop, ZTR, still very young and not that experienced. Twist is more just new to the IGL space specifically. But I think there's some promise here in these three guys. Just not quite seeing it all. Next, the fall off is historic. It's Kanye. This is the Kanye tier. These guys, I'm sorry. There's been some very strong problems with what I've seen recently from these guys. And they used to be quite respected. Now it's just getting a bit awkward. Chopper and Tabson, I mean, guys, I think you could be doing more with what you have. Both of you. I don't think the talent in Germany is dried up. I think Big should be a pretty strong team. I just think Tabson isn't quite making it happen. Chopper,
even who's on the team, you have Crimbo and JDC. You should, and Rigon. You should do way more with those three players, to be honest.
In theory, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Kind of have to observe the fall off. Like, Kanye's a guy who has everything. He can have every feature he wants. He can put millions of dollars into albums. They still signed kind of whack, so they're kind of falling down. Just above them, this is people on the way up. These guys are on the way up. They're dark horses. Now, they're not all necessarily young, but they're guys who slightly changed their situation, and you would be talking about them amongst the best ones. Because these guys are great decision makers, leaders for their teams, fraggers in a couple of contexts. Stanislaw, not so much, but Maka, Big Uzira, great fraggers, leaders with conviction. And I think if you were talking about them on a team with more proven pieces, you would have them as top IGLs. But they're dark horses for now because they don't have the resources and they don't have sort of the clout in that sense, but they are definitely on their way. They're strong guys. Just above them, used to be the very best, on top of the world. Currently, still pretty good. Like, still pretty good as a leader is Carrigan, who sits alone in the Nas tier, as I've put it. But not quite at former glory. Like, Nas used to dominate the scene, and his albums recently have been pretty solid. I've enjoyed them. But it's not quite classic. It's not quite right. So not like Carrigan sits alone, sort of this tier, just outside the top 5. Very impressive, still strong. 12-8 up against Furia here to make playoffs, although they are losing the rounds. Hopefully he holds on.
It's 12-8, but he was 12-2.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried. But yeah, that's where Carrigan sits. Up next, this is Baby Keem. This is the future. I'm going to be honest. These guys are the future. They've already done so much, and I feel like they're going to do so much more. Kixan, Shuhei, Blitz, all three of them fit my ideal sort of theory of what the future is going to be in Counter-Strike. They are fraggers. They are leaders. They're not necessarily insane tacticians, but that doesn't really, I think, matter as much as the first two factors. You don't need to be super strong strategically. You need to be good at convincing your team to just execute a plan, and you should be able to show some fragging prowess if you're going to be an IGL in the future. Then the top tier, yeah, it's Kendrick. It's the best right now. It's just the best right now. Like, you may have personal preferences, but this is just the best there is right now. And that's Alexi B in Apex. Now, would some people want to start disagreeing potentially after Navi don't make it out of the groups? I simply say, is the team that good? Are the players actually that good? Because we've not ever talked about any of them as a superstar. We've just said they have been good for these roles. They have been, being able to shine in these positions, and they finally delivered more when they've actually gone and won events. We haven't actually believed in them explicitly as superstar players. So the fact that Alexi B has built such an amazing run with these guys, it's credit to him and Blade, but this is an IGL tier list. Apex, on the other hand, we know his flaws. We do. They're real. There's no point pretending otherwise. He does have problems. But I still have him as one of the best in terms of actual ability on the server and calling. He just stands right at the top for now. We'll see how this changes next year. I think that second tier, those guys who are on the way up, who are about to overtake, are closer than the analogies in the titles actually suggest. Because I don't think Kendrick's relinquishing his grip of number one for a while. But Apex and Alexi B, I don't see necessarily staying on top in the next year for very long, if those guys beneath him perform as I expect them to. So yeah, that's my IGL tier list with a crowbarred-in theme that came to me at 1 a.m. Quacke, firstly, love it or hate it? And also, where do you move anyone?
I like it. I like the theme. I'm not too big into this this particular hip hop scene, so I got to be honest. Vince Staples, I don't know anything about. But
exactly, that's the dark horse tier. That's why.
Yeah, I can understand it. I can understand it. What you should have done is put Stanislaw alone in the Eminem tier because he did what somebody else was doing, but more successfully. But no, sorry, that's a joke. I do actually want to talk about Stanislaw. Stanislaw has been excellent this major, and I think honestly you could have put Stanislaw in a separate tier, and I don't know who this would apply to, like the rapper analogy wise. You could have put him in like a tier which would have been sensational recovery, because the way that Stanislaw has several times now dropped completely out of the tier 1 space and has clawed his way back. Because we talk about, like, I think he would have had his early start on Liquid. If I'm not remembering correctly, he was on Liquid early on in his career. Yep. Completely flopped, dropped out, made a return with the NRG core by, as the narrative would say, snatching Daps's spot in that NRG team, which turned into Evil Geniuses, which turned into great success. At one point, definitely one of the best teams in the world. With not a huge amount of established talent, so to speak. Like Breezy, Ethan, and Cirque were by and large pretty fresh at that point. Fell off completely. The EG fall off has been studied to death. And the dude was like, people were blaming Stanislaw for this. I was blaming Stanislaw for this. We were all pretty much down. Like, we were completely out on Stanislaw ever being remotely noteworthy again. He dropped to advanced. Like, he was playing ESEA advanced in North America at one point. To, I think, limited degrees of success. Ends up on this wildcard team and manages to stay on in the restructuring with Sussman Fuzi, I believe, because I think he was already there. And more or less immediately turns it into probably the most success they could have realistically hoped for in the fall season. Like, they've had a couple of land stumbles. We talk about wildcard a lot, but now they're back. And like that sort of recovery. And even then, Stanislaw, like the way he's also spoken about his team, I really respect it as a leader. And I do think that, like, the way he's spoken about, like, no, this is not my success, this is my teammates, it's all my teammates. Like, we hear this all the time, but it's really genuine, especially for somebody who has been up and down so much as Stanislaw. So he's back, and I don't know who this would be rapping wise. Like, who is somebody who
constantly disappears off the face of the earth but comes back again? Like,
sort of like that. Well, you count him out and you're like, no, this guy's washed, and then suddenly drops a banger record out of nowhere. I'm still trying to think of a general music reference.
A general music reference? But they have to kind of shit the bed every time. They kind of have to have something that's trash to preempt that fall off, disappear, then come back.
Yeah, I guess nobody really does it several times, because you have a banger album and then a very middling...
it's over. Phase of one.
Yeah, I did see 13th up.
Let's go, Carrigan. I didn't believe in you making playoffs, but you did it because you got to face Fury in your last game.
Yeah, had fun flying home after Thursday. Or Friday. I'm just like, it's I'm trying to think of a music reference there in general. Like, you don't really have banger record, dog shit, banger, dog shit, and then banger again. But I probably I'm trying to think if there's a rock band who did it. Like, somebody, they dropped a couple of bangers and then they could never replicate it, and everybody was like, oh, it's another X record, and then they drop an absolute banger. to like cap off their career.
No one I've ever seen done it multiple times. You know what I mean? Like,
No, yeah.
Like I think. Nah. No. I don't have any reference. But
Oh,
yeah.
actually, I actually might have one.
What's up?
From which isn't a rap reference, but it's Aerosmith, because they absolutely dropped off the face of the earth with their middle records, and then they came back in the later years. But yeah,
They did.
Yeah.
I'm asking because I don't really know Aerosmith's discography at all.
They were really successful with like the first 2-3 records, and then everything else was a bit of a mess. It was all drugs and everything. They took a long hiatus, and then, well, not a long hiatus, but a bit of a hiatus. Came back, dropped a banger, and they carry on. Anyway, that's a deep cut.
But yeah, let's
carry on.
Let's sort of
excellent tiers.
No one you'd move around. You think everyone's in the right
place?
No,
not really. I think like part of me would maybe move. I would maybe move Twists up a bit, because I do think he's impressed in his first season as a caller. I would maybe put him, maybe not particularly in Baby Keem, but I would maybe put him.
Jesus.
No, I wouldn't put him there, but I would maybe put him like equal to Big Uzira and the guys.
You'd want him there, okay?
Maybe I drop as well as impress. He might actually fit where he is. The only one I'm thinking moving downwards is maybe Maka, just because I haven't seen him too much. Like I haven't. If you're impressed by him, then I would trust that judgment, because I don't have a leg to stand on. Yeah, but it's my gut feeling says that maybe Maka isn't on par with some of the guys next to him.
I have to be impressed by him, because he's in AWPing IGL with a team of riflers who are not exactly superstars, put it generously. And he gets so much out of them as a team just by the style he's able to make them play. So I think that's the important part. It's literally his IGLing that's saving this team. So that's why I loved him. But all right, let's get on to the eternal shuffle, because it's always going on. There's always teams changing. Like nothing ever stays the same.
Pretty lean this week, thankfully, because I'm in a bit of a rush.
But yeah, let's start 9. Cut Sound and Masuta, testing several players. For me, this better be Sound and Masuta going somewhere. This cannot be just they are getting benched, because they are too good. They've been too good on this team. Like, you're not cutting them out of choice if you're the team, unless they've said, we don't want to play with you. I'm just going to be honest. Like, Masuta especially has been their best player. Series they win is because Masuta wins them. To put it bluntly, I do not rate the majority of what they've done. So hopefully that means he's going somewhere. But also good luck to 9 finding replacements, because I don't really know if they've got much of a future. Like
I can tell you who they've been testing. They've played with Bob XD, and he's actually been doing quite well. And let me see. Yeah, they have been playing with Faven. So Bob XD and Faven are potentially
bloody hell. Okay.
Which I think, it's banking on Faven finding the good tier 2 for Misad previously. But I think they've also said that they're testing several players, so it's not necessarily going to be these guys. But that's who they've been playing with right now. I don't know the details of why they're benched. They were benched and allowed to explore their options, so I'm assuming they have just chosen to bench them. More so than that, more so than they have an offer.
Yeah, that's honestly, it's not looking pretty. Let's be real. If you're signing Faven, I don't think you're making much of a choice. TSM and Spirit have exited ESL Impact, so those orgs are gone. Are the players sticking together? Do we have any news on that, or is it?
No, I'm assuming Shimmer are going to stick together, because they were sort of semi-dropped even to begin with, because that was the TSM roster more or less, right?
It was, yeah.
Actually, they have been. No, sorry, they were. Like part of the team was dropped, and then they reformed with a bunch of other players, but like the core was still there, even with the TSM lady. So I'm assuming that something is going to happen. I think Mads is in Philadelphia right now. I think playing Prague-Adelphia.
Yeah.
Here it is. They dropped Phoebe and Empathy, and Empathy and Phoebe basically reformed the Shimmer team, and now they've also dropped the rest of the roster, who were more or less substitutes, I think, for the period of this post-Impact season. They still play some stuff. I'm assuming they stick together in some capacity. Spirit, I have absolutely no idea, because I think that roster, if I'm remembering correctly, this was like originally... Oh, sorry, I opened the mail team. Originally, I think that this was an international roster, and then it turned into a Russian roster. I can't even remember exactly how it went down. Yeah, but they went in with one Russian player and a Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, they had.
Yeah,
it was Russian bubble, sort of like,
yeah. But they went in with Shia and Moraltes, namely, and then they've moved on to a full Russian squad with Crazy. Oh, they had Krasi and Averona, Roniaka, and Ulis. Anyway, they've had players. Jamie has been the person I remember most because she's been around. I have no idea if they're sticking together. I don't know where they came from. I don't know where they're going. Cotton Eye Joe.
Right. So yeah, curious to see what happens to them. There are some decent players being left behind on the Spirit front, especially. I thought they're not a terrible team by any means. Probably some value to be found in that group. Aurora have cut Lackey and Brain, who I assume was their coach, and added Zoma to their coaching staff. Zoma's doing the rounds at this point, like ever since the VP attempt. He's just been bouncing about. It's I mean, I'm curious to see who they'll actually bring in the place of Lackey, because Lackey was calling on this team, wasn't he not?
I would assume so, yeah. I don't have any idea who it would have been otherwise.
So yeah, now they're down 2 players. They still have Norway, Kenzie, Clax, and that's about it. Zoma comes in. We'll see what ends up following up. This is a very half a move type move, We know one half. What's the rest of it going to be?
They're missing Deco. I think Lackey was... I've always thought Lackey was a fine enough player for the roles he plays, for what he does. He's never going to be on a major playoffs roster, but he was fine enough in the Entropic time and all the old wins.
Yeah, I think for them it's also a question of he's your IGL. Maybe he's not the right IGL. Like that's the question. Like if he's just a role player, whatever. But if he also has to call, you might want to move on.
I think Clax is a very underwhelming move, especially considering who they were losing. I think even if Deco has been problematic and perhaps hasn't wanted to really commit to his Counter-Strike career, as some would have said, I think they have a hard time replacing him. And Kinzie in Norway is an extremely strong core, which definitely could get poached. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen with Virtus Pro. We have no idea what's going to happen with teams like BetBoom. There are failures in the upper reaches of the Russian scene, and we talked about this. Even Cloud9, I wouldn't put it past making a roster change if they even keep their Russian-speaking roster. So there's changes to be made. Kenzie and Norway, I wouldn't call them safe, so to speak, for Aurora to sell. Maybe this is just like a very slow disbanding.
Yeah, we'll find out. The Russian shuffle is going to be immense. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of changes. Alliance have cut Bodenmaster. Now, Bodenmaster, for those of you who don't follow Swedish Counter-Strike, was the AWP IGL of this team.
Only AWP.
Only AWP.
He could have IGL.
Right?
Twist was calling Alliance this whole time. Not this whole time, since they cut Robin. At one point in his career, he was calling, I think, but not in Alliance.
But basically, where we are with this guy is, in my eyes, he's whatever. I mean, the Swedish AWPing scene isn't exactly prolific. So I'm just a bit...
Yeah.
Cool, he's gone. Next.
Yeah, he's fine. I'm curious about who they get, because Silence is on the market. I remember when Young Ninjas sort of made their changes, they were like, oh, Silence, like you see, they're now open to offers. Era is playing with them right now. I'm not sure if that's going to be final, but that's an upgrade for sure. Even if Era isn't world beating, that's an upgrade, but he's also with Copenhagen Wolves, so I have no idea. Silence is maybe available.
Oh my
TVS is maybe available. There's a couple more players you could mention who are doing the rounds. Chausy's out there. I think Fragbite even leaked that Chausey was going to be the new offer for Alliance, and in that case, he might be op IGL, since that's what he said. For his next team, he wants to be op IGL. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
just died a bit, but yeah, Chausey op IGL would be so fucking dumb. Please don't do that, Chausey. Just AWP, buddy.
He could just AWP, and Twist has been fine as a caller, I think. But I think because Alliance have had a decently successful season. Like it's not that they were making strides forward, but they were definitely slowing the descent, so to speak. But yeah,
Yeah, we've finally seen a little bit out of Arvid, a little bit out of who else was it? It was actually
Twist.
played all right.
Twist was really good. Twist was really good.
Yeah, Twist played all right. So maybe there was some future here, but just not very impressed by its general. Prospect of the week, Quacke.
Yes.
Who have you picked? Because I may die in a second again, so need you to talk.
I have picked up. I have picked Bob XD. I did mention him before. He's been test playing with 9. He's had a great week, more or less. He's had, I think he's had a 111 average. He's been playing some domestic opposition. They beat Eyeballers in a pretty convincing series, and yeah, Bob XD was one of the big guys there. 161, 155, perfect. I think he's doing fine in 9, and I think Bob XD has always been one of those guys. He has talent, and he's showed up on a bunch of rosters where he's never been the big numbers guy, but he's talented. He's talented for his roles. He plays a lot of aggressive roles, and especially like there is talent on this 9 team. Like I can't say that I think Mantu should be on the 84th best team in the world. I think he's definitely better than that. So I think if somebody can bring...
Doesn't play like it.
Let's not get into that. Let's not get into that.
Doesn't play like it. Just saying, doesn't play like it.
Okay,
he plays like he's exactly in the right place.
If Bob XD ends up here and he ends up playing well with whoever caller ends up being here, I'm going to be happy because I think he should be on a team where he can perform. And so far, at least, it looks like he could be, honestly, going off of stats, side grade to sound. Like,
yeah, that's
sound,
fair.
Yeah,
just on the numbers.
Yeah, just on the numbers, side grade to sound. So good job, and I hope he goes even further than that. So as a prospect, I always think he's been quite a little bit out of the limelight. I think he has had some inconsistencies, and the average always looked a little bit like, here and there. But he did have peaks, he did have bottoms. It's much the same story as somebody like Pepsor or Sapek, but I think he's a good player, and he's playing in CCT right now. So for anybody saying pretty CCT man, that's absolutely not the case. They are just bullshitters.
They are indeed. Not the most generous comparisons to end with, Pepsor and Sapek, but all right. Hopefully he does better than that.
Yeah, I mean, he was also good on Johnny Speeds. He was very good on Johnny Speeds. So obviously people are seeing that, yes, this guy was a good player on Johnny Speeds. I'm not saying that this guy is the next Brolin or Rez. It's very hard to say that. But it's, he is one of the stronger players we have in Sweden, and I do think he's a
he could definitely be the next Rez. I mean, give him 150 opportunities at big lands. He could also maybe fluke an MVP or two. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't have to do much to match it. My pick, prospect of the week, Gizmy. Picked a UK player. I could have picked some other players. I had a couple on my list I was looking at, but I was like, fuck me. I'm dying over here.
Smooya, everybody.
I picked Gizmy because I was like, you know what? He's the openings guy for this Monty Gen roster. They've had a solid 7 days. I was considering Ken Cesar as well, but technically he's only played 3 maps in this week. It'd be mostly based off the volume of him having played also the week before. But Gizmy had an active week, played quite well. Openings guy for this team. Basically their star player on the T side. And yeah, Monty Gen played excellent. He was a key part of that. And let's wrap it up there so I can go choke to death in quiet. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, sorry for choking to death in your ears. I muted most of it, but crap, some of it was mid-conversation, so I couldn't.
Excellent.
Yeah, very fun. But all right, leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment, tell us your thoughts on everything. I'm sure I'll have a lot of comments from Navi fans about that Fluke reference. Quacke, talk.
Keep an eye on our Twitters, because there's going to be something in the next day or two, which is going to be pretty awesome for next week's episode. We didn't talk about it. You can hear about it in the behind the scenes. Become a member and listen. You can find out already, right now, in the behind the scenes segment, what we're planning to do.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool. It's going to be cool.
Sub for more content, and become a member if you want more content and rights. But all right, that's all for this one. We'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye.